Oh, is it 7? Do we start? Oh, it is 7 o'clock. Hey, welcome to the Halloween edition of the City Council. It's October 19th, 2021. This is Clayton City Council. We're going to call to order now, and we will do the roll call. I see Janet is here. It's all yours, Janet.
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Tillman?
Here.
Councilmember Juan?
Here.
Vice Mayor Cloven?
I'm here.
Mayor Wolf?
I'm here too. We are all here. And now we're going to go to, I think, a new video. I'm not sure about that, but let's check out our meeting protocol video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provisions of the AB 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is also being webcast on the City of Clayton's website. The mayor will call upon its council presenters, staff, and other speakers by name and ask that they speak clearly and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via webcast and Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. Telephone attendees will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their name, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received by the Clayton City Clerk by 5 p.m. today will be entered into the record but will not be read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand and the mayor will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. The chat feature is not active. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date.
Very nice. Nice changes. Okay, now we're going on to our Pledge of Allegiance, as always led by Councilmember Diaz. You're on mute, Jim.
Can you read my lips?
Yes, we know you started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Item number 4 is the consent calendar. Anybody have any comments or want to pull anything from the calendar? Yes, Raina.
Just really quickly, I would like to introduce formally Catherine Korsek, our new finance director. She has a couple of items on the consent calendar, which is why she's here. So just wanted to give everyone the opportunity to acknowledge that Catherine has joined us, and I'm thrilled to have her on the team. And with that, I will turn it over to any of the council members who have any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Juan.
First, welcome, Catherine. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. It's good to have you. I did have questions on your item here, though, so I wanted to ask you. Now that you're here, it's perfect. So I did have questions on, I guess it's item D, 4D, and 4F. So we can talk about that now if you'd like, or.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'll go with 4F first, since I already mentioned that I had questions for Catherine. In the report, it indicates that our year-to-date interest earnings is 187% over forecast. What is that essentially means that our forecast number wasn't a realistic number. What would be an actual realistic number? Because it seems like it sounds like the budget was a placeholder. Like, do we have a sense? And I know that you're brand new, so it's fine if you don't have an answer, no big deal. But it does see. My question is more around, like, if we are at 187% of forecast, are we offsetting that with a shortfall in other areas, or is this a net windfall over our total budget, giving us an additional funds? So that other than what was expected, I guess.
Yeah, and let me step in because Catherine is brand new and she can comment on this as well. Two things to know about that, because I noted it as well when I looked at this, the two reports. One is that it looks like historically we haven't broken out general fund versus other funds interest in that summary statement, and so you'll see that in the report. I think, excuse me, I think we do need to do that. So the percentage actually doesn't make sense because it's comparing apples and oranges. It's comparing all funds interest against general fund interest budget, is what it looks like from the report. And so we'll need to look at that in the future. The second part of your question, is it being offset? So we'll be back in the first part of 2022 with a mid-year budget review, and we'll have a much better sense then what that overall revenue picture looks like, not just the interest picture, component, which is really a very minor piece.
Yeah, I mean, just, it's called out here. So I guess, is there a sense that it is somewhat, I mean, I'm not looking for specifics or anything like that. I'm just wondering if that is essentially offset somewhere. When you look at it holistically, total enterprise, is the interest in line with what our expectation, or are we actually getting something more? Because interest rates right now are really crappy. So that would be surprising. I would expect it to be below what our targets are, but that's just me. So I don't know if you have any other insight into that, but if not, then we can talk about it at a future.
Yeah, and I don't at this exact moment. Right when these investment reports were prepared, Sandra Soto, who was the intern, was on her way out and I was on my way in. So there was a little bit of overlap there. But I will investigate that and let you know.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything. And I know that, when you first come in, there's probably about a million things. So
yes, no problem.
This is just one of them.
Councilman, this is Laura Hoffmeister, your assistant to the city manager. On a high level, my recollection is that when we did the budget, Paul Rodriguez was here, and those were very conservative investment returns that he was expecting. So to be above that, he was being very conservative. It was COVID. We weren't sure how things were going to be. So I think when Catherine dives into it, it'll probably show something along those lines, that we did do better than we had projected in the budget, which is a good thing.
Yeah, well, let's find out, and that could be good news. So. All right, thanks. Anyone else have questions on F, or is it just me? All right, cool. For D, it looks like for the impact fees that we've established, it looks like there are 6 different, I don't know what to call it, areas or sections.
Categories.
Categories. Okay. Do we have a sense of if we've actually used any of the impact fees collected in any recent times? This is like something that happens probably more behind the scenes, but I'm just curious. It doesn't look like we collect a great deal because it's based on development, and then it doesn't look like we use a great deal because we collect such a paltry amount. It doesn't really go anywhere. So it looks, I'm not sure how long these have aged. Do we have a sense of that? When the last time we utilized any in these categories?
We can get back to you, Councilman. This is your assistant to the city manager, Laura Hoffmeister. We can get back to you with more specifics. My recollection is North Valley Park was one of the last projects we did, and we used some fees for that project, which was the capital replacement equipment project there. But you are correct.
It's a great playground, by the way. So
yeah. Development in Clayton is, not like a large city where you have a lot of consistent development. So we have long lag periods where we don't have any development for a long period of time. And then we see a pop of some developer fees. And it does take a while to build up accounts to be able to have sufficient funds to do projects with. Diablo Metals will be coming forward probably this fiscal year and pay their impact fees, possibly Oak Creek Canyon. And we'll see, what those numbers show. And we come back to council to appropriate the funds when we have projects that fit those impact fee categories.
Okay. Yeah, and I wasn't sure. Like, I know that we have certain traffic. I don't know if projects is the right word. We have traffic things that are in flight, and I don't know if like some of these apply or may apply. And it'd be great to be able to use some of the fees that have been collected. And I'm just not aware if we've, what our history is
Very
there.
specific in the ordinance as to how you can use them, and that is a question that we are looking at in terms of the traffic fees, as to seeing what flexibilities there are.
Okay, yeah. The more that we could draw down on the collection would be great.
We have a tracking of how those fees have been expended historically. We can certainly follow up and get information to you to
Okay, thank you.
provide a
Appreciate it.
historical perspective.
Yeah, the history would be helpful. Thank you. That was all my questions.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, comments, something they want to pull? Okay, so we'll go to the, pardon me, Holly?
No, I was just going to say that there was nothing I wanted to pull. I had a question earlier on item 4E regarding the abandoned vehicle abatement fee, but that was answered offline regarding what was the definition of abandoned. So for these, so
Okay.
Thank you.
And nobody else? I would go to the public. And do we have anybody, Janet, to open a public comment on the consent calendar?
Mayor Wolf, I do not have any hands raised on this item.
Okay, and we'll close the public comment on the consent calendar, bring it back to council for a motion. And do we need it? Okay, I was going to ask you if you needed anything, but okay. So a motion to approve by Juan, and second?
Second.
Second by Cloven. Janet, you can call the vote.
Councilmember Diaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Tillman,
Aye.
Councilmember Juan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cloven,
Yes.
Mayor Wolf.
Yes. Moving on now to item number 5, recognitions and presentations. We do have a presentation today by the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office, Diana Beckton, District Attorney, and we bring her in. There she is. Welcome, Diana Beckton. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there. So welcome, and we'll look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all of the Vice Mayor and all of the council members and others who have joined us this evening. It's great to be with you, and I'm pleased to have an opportunity to share with you an overview of the District Attorney's Office and some of the work that we have been doing. I have a PowerPoint, which I'll be getting up very quickly. I think I can share the screen, I think, yeah. And just while that is coming up, I will just share with you, of course, that I was appointed by the Board of Supervisors in 2017 and duly elected by the people in 2018. I served as a judge in the county for 22 years, was elected the presiding judge, past president of the National Association of Women Judges, as well as chair of the State Bar Council and Access. I currently serve on the governor's, appointed by the governor to serve on the California Victims Compensation Board to make sure that victims of crime are receiving fair treatment and just compensation. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about our office. First, I'm going to go over just a little bit about our budget and the personnel, a department overview so that you can see all of the departments that we have so busy working in Contra Costa County, as well as some of the new programs that we have initiated. I put this slide up. It's the seal of the county and my office, but it really represents the fact that all of the work that we do is in collaboration with others, either our law enforcement partners, community organizations, our community justice partners, and people, citizens like yourselves. So much of what we do is in collaboration. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I want to make sure that you have time to ask questions if you'd like. I have a budget of $49 million. About $27.3 million of that comes from federal grants that we receive, as well as state grants and also Prop 172 funds. The balance comes from the county, $21 million. No surprise that the work that we do is fueled by people. And so 93% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits for our staff. I have a staff of 226, our attorney staff, which you'll hear about all the work that they're doing, our investigative unit, which is our law enforcement arm, sworn peace officers. When we receive cases from our law enforcement partners or from our federal or state partners, sometimes we have additional investigation to conduct. They also help us to locate witnesses and serve subpoenas, and they stand up the work around our officer-involved shooting investigations as well. The victim witness unit, it just does a tremendous job of reaching out to those who are victims and survivors of crime at a time that can be very traumatic in their lives. So this unit helps them to understand their rights, to navigate the system, to find support services, counseling, and things that they may need at this difficult time. And then the balance of our staff is made up of our administrative staff and our support. We are here to seek, serve, and do justice. We serve the entire county, all 1.15 million residents. I work with 25 law enforcement agencies in 19 cities. In 2020, we filed about 3,300 felony cases and over 4,600 misdemeanor cases. We have the things that you might think about traditionally when you think about a district attorney's office. Our superior court operations is our day-to-day operations of felony matters in our courtrooms. That's our general trial team, our law and motion teams, preliminary hearings where a judge decides whether there's enough evidence to bind the person over to trial, along with the grand jury and mental health services as well. We work out of 4 courthouses in the county, in Martinez, in Pittsburgh, in Walnut Creek, where our juvenile is housed, as well as the Richmond courthouse. Then our special operations division is the one where you might not think about a district attorney's office. Here we have consumer protection, our environmental protection unit, which really works to hold accountable those, especially those corporations and others who are committing hazardous waste that harms our environment and our animals and people. Workers' compensation, public assistance fraud, real estate fraud, all of those things are housed there. We've had some major recent cases. We just out in your area find a steel company for $4 million that was producing hazardous waste into our community. Our violence reduction unit is, sometimes people think about it as a gang unit, but it's really much more than that. This is the unit that works to reduce violent crime in our communities that might be caused by guns and gangs, and even working along with human trafficking, as I'll talk about in a minute. They do that through prevention and education, but also rigorous prosecution. We work very closely. We have an FBI Safe Streets Task Force here in Contra Costa County. I have a lieutenant there who also works alongside with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies in our county to focus on those who are committing the most violent and dangerous crimes in our community and to bring justice. Of course, our homicide unit, I think, speaks for itself. We're prosecuting those who take the lives of others. Family violence houses our domestic violence, child abuse cases, elder abuse, our juvenile, and let's see, elder abuse, I was just trying to miss one. Oh, sexual assault cases as well. And we work also closely with the CIC Interview Center, which is a specialized center where especially children can be interviewed and reported so that they don't have to keep telling their traumatic stories over and over. Our juvenile unit, of course, concentrating on those under the age of 18 who commit crimes. And I've talked already about our victim witness and our Bureau of Investigation. Some of the additional units that we've brought on board. We have a conviction integrity unit that I established in the last couple of years, that it is the first standalone unit to be stood up in Contra Costa County to seek justice for those who might have been wrongfully convicted. We also investigate claims of actual innocence and cases where there is evidence involving a significant integrity issue. Our cold case unit was developed because with the advancements in DNA technology, we've been able to go back and solve old unsolved cases that we didn't have answers for. You've probably seen a lot of those major cases in the newspaper, like the Golden State Killer who terrorized people up and down the state of California for years. So with that advanced technology, we've created this unit. We have an experienced prosecutor who works with law enforcement around the county to take a look at all unsolved murders and see if we can bring justice in those areas. We just received a federal grant to stand up additional work for our investigative unit there. I established a human trafficking unit as well. This is a unit that works collaboratively with many, many agencies in our county, as well as federal and state partners. As you know, human trafficking has become an issue up and down, not only California, but also the country and the world, indeed. And because Contra Costa County is in a corridor where transportation is accessible, it really makes it easy for people to move, you know, say from San Francisco to Oakland, to Contra Costa County, and then on up to Sacramento. So we work here to concentrate our efforts, again, on prevention, on education, but also on rigorous prosecution as well. For those who are violating people and abusing them for use of their labor and for sex. And then we've established a hate crime unit as well that works closely with our law enforcement partners and our community groups, so that these are experienced prosecutors who have dealt with the cases before and can recognize the hate crimes and file them appropriately when those cases come into our office. Our sexual assault test kits are all up to date. And we are putting in place a tracking system along with our law enforcement partners so that it is an electronic system and those cases never get behind again. We've had them up to date since 2019. We were able to make that announcement. We also have received $1 million grant to establish the first in Contra Costa County Youth Restorative Justice Diversion Program. It uses that lens not only to hold our youth accountable, but to also make sure that they're getting the services they need so that they do not come back into our criminal justice system, to reduce recidivism and to also address some of the racial and ethnic disparities that exist in our criminal justice system. I'm very excited about our neighborhood courts and very excited that we can finally push these out. We're going to be looking to all of you to help us to recruit citizens who are willing to be trained as arbitrators in your communities, who can hear small, low-level crime cases, decide what is the appropriate way to hold a community accountable, hold a person accountable, and also make the community whole. So at the end of this presentation, you'll see an email for people who might be interested in serving as arbitrators for those kinds of cases can sign up, and we will conduct the training and then go from there. We also participate in several mental health diversion courts. We have a veterans court, as well as behavioral health court and a mental health court where we've received funding from the state to stand those courts up. And then our post-conviction resentencing, we recently received $1 million from this governor's office to work with this, to go back and look at old sentences that may not be imposed today and recommend to the court that they be reduced. We brought to our county prosecutors the first immigration training so that people understand the law around the consequences of plea bargaining as it relates to deportation. We brought the first implicit bias training for our office, as well as a community academy where citizens have an opportunity to come and to be a part of learning about our criminal justice system. They sit with us for a few weeks, learn about our office, the sheriff's office, the courts, and all of our justice partners and how we work together on community safety issues. And then they have a certificate at the end. And then finally, the only other thing I think I want to mention is our Code for America work. Once the laws passed so that marijuana was no longer unlawful, we still had people who had thousands of convictions on the books. So we were selected by Code for America to be one of the first counties to work with them to use an electronic algorithm to find those cases and reduce over 2,300 cases that let people now have access to housing and jobs. And so, yeah, and there's plenty of other stuff that we've been doing, but happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is where you can make contact if you would like to be a part of our community courts or sign up for our neighborhood courts. Please contact us and let us know. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Diaz has his hand up.
Well, thank you. And District Attorney Beckton, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and visit Clayton. This is in recent memory. I cannot recall having the District Attorney make a presentation as such. And it's certainly informative and very, very, very useful and helpful. I have a couple of things that I want to delve into. First of all, let me just say this, that Clayton is blessed by a very, very low crime rate. Our citizens, many of them came to Clayton because of the community feel that we have, and obviously the very low crime rate, which we really work hard to maintain. Our police department is exceptional in responding to calls for services. And what's interesting is that the largest areas that they have to address include traffic issues, mail theft, and packages that taken off of the front porches. We're seeing an increase, a small increase in the places like Safeway, where people are going in there and trying to have their property taken out without having to pay for it. So that tends to be, the major thrust that we have. I want to ask some questions related to three basic areas: filing of cases.
I'm sorry. What was the
filing of cases?
Okay.
Filing of cases. Timing of case filing decisions. And finally, the area of just general office policy and procedures for your office. You mentioned the number of felony prosecutions and misdemeanors that you, and I take that for the last year or calendar year. But my question relates to, based on the number of cases that are referred to you from various law enforcement agencies that you deal with, what percentage is actually filed? In other words, if, just for example, if you received 100 cases, how many of these cases do you actually file on? And what's the decision factor?
Sure, that's a great question, and it's really an interesting one, because one of the things is you don't see from a prosecutor's office is data, and so it is a place where I'm working right now to make sure that by the time I come back to you next year, I will have a public portal that I'm working with two agencies. One is Measures for Justice, that has rolled out a program to help district attorneys' officers gather their data. One thing that can be very difficult around that is we have a system that is our case management system. But when you go into it, it's really like opening up a file. So you can look in there, you can see the police report, you can see those kinds of things, but it's really not made for us to extract the kind of data that you're asking us for. And that's why, and I think that data and transparency and being able to answer the questions that you're asking is very important. So I'm working with a couple of different entities. They're helping us to stand up a data portal that will be on our website, where you'll be able to go in and get questions exactly like the ones you're asking. You'll be able to see what came into our door by category, like what kinds of crimes came into our door. You'll also be able to see what we filed, so that you can see if 100 cases came in, did we file 75% of them?
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to see the race, and you'll be able to see where they came from in our county. So that's something that we're working on right now, and I hope to be able to stand that portal up within the next year to answer this.
That would be very helpful and informative. Following up on that, when a case is finally filed, and I don't understand how it all works, but I gather that there's an initial review of a case that's submitted by a law enforcement entity, and then it was reviewed, and then some determination is made. And I guess one of the questions that I have, and I think some of the law enforcement community that I've talked with, is that how long should they wait or expect to wait for a decision? 24, 48 hours? Generally, I mean, it does take some review, and I understand that. And maybe they haven't done a complete job in terms of being able to take that case and move with it. But in general, how long should they have to expect to wait on a decision?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, it depends on the category, right? So we have those custody cases that are in custodies, and those are going to be the most serious cases. And we have so much time. We have 48 hours to be able to file a case when someone is held in custody. Otherwise, they will have to be released. And so those cases obviously get the priority in our office. Once we have taken, and the other cases that come in an out of custody status. And we, I think, have done a pretty good job of really turning those cases around fairly quickly. We have sometimes when we return cases to the agency because we need additional information, we don't have enough to be able to file charges in some cases. But I would say that generally speaking, if we get a case in our office, we should be able to make a decision on that case about filing if we're not waiting on additional information. I would say within 30 to 45 days on the out of custody cases. And if that's not happening, then please let us know.
Yeah, and some of the very limited research that I've done, and this is something that, as I said, we're seeing property being taken from the Safeway, and and I guess some other communities have had to, some of the businesses have left those communities because of lack of prosecution, and I know it's frustrating from particularly our officers in Clayton that if someone is trying to abduct with some property out of the Safeway, for example, and they take them into custody, and in several cases, from what I've heard, is that they're taken into custody, and within less than a few hours, that individual is released and no charges filed, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It might be frustrating, but that is it's not really a function. It's not really an issue that generates with the DA's office. The first thing that happened is with COVID. So with COVID, we have a situation where we have to keep our jail population low. And so the Sheriff's Department issued information to all of the law enforcement agencies and to our office to try to only bring into custody those who are committing the most violent and dangerous crimes within our communities. Because once there are too many people in the jail, then an outbreak could affect a great number of people in our community, because it's not just the people in custody, but it's also all of those who work in our facilities. So during the whole last year, there was a big push. Those kinds of cases would not be even received in the jail. The second part of it is that during COVID, there was a statewide bail schedule, so that all of those misdemeanor cases, almost every single one had zero bail. So there's really no ability to hold people in custody. And then the third part of it is that the bail schedule is actually set by the judges in Contra Costa County. And even now, as we are coming out of COVID, the same kind of bail schedule is pretty much in place now. So there's really no ability for people who are committing small and low-level crimes within our community to be kept and held in custody in Contra Costa County.
Okay, and that's, you're relating that to like petty theft, for example.
Exactly, that would be a good example. Mm-hmm.
Is there a policy in your office that your attorneys operate under that, and this is a very specific instance of where looters have taken material or property out of a business or some facility, and somehow there's a determination that the looter needed the information or needed that product. Is there an issue there that when if it's determined, well, I think they really needed it, so we're not going to take any action?
Yeah, that's one of the greatest myths that went around the circles, and so I'm glad I have an opportunity to clear that up. So looting, the crimes that the penal code sections that are on the book around looting are really connected to those situations where you have true emergencies, like when we had the huge fires, right?
Mhm.
Or when you had the riots down in Los Angeles, where people are taking advantage of the emergency to be able to commit crimes. We saw that, for example, when around the George Floyd riots, when we had people in our own community go into stores in Walnut Creek and break the windows and go in and take things, right?
Right.
So it is a huge myth. And we did, when those cases came into our office, we did prosecute. It is a huge myth. One of the things that my management team put together, they tried to put together a list of criteria that they could use to help evaluate cases when they came in to determine, is this a regular theft that might happen any day of the week? Or is this the kind of crime where someone is taking advantage of the fact that we are in a pandemic and committing this crime, like those who are going, let's say, into Nordstrom's and breaking windows to take things. One of the things that they put into that policy was need, but it's not the kind of need that you're thinking of. Suppose you are in a situation where there's no water, for example, and we all know that you have so many days to live if you don't get water. And if that's the kind of need that we're talking about, where it's a life and death situation where you have to be able to take something so that you can survive, not because somebody went in the store because they need a pair of tennis shoes. And so it's really blown out of proportion. We've simply just taken that out because it's really not the kind of thing that they're thinking about when we're thinking about.
By the way, you mentioned the situation over in Walnut Creek. I had firsthand experience after those protests took place. It just so happened we needed a new cellular phone, and we went to the AT&T office there in downtown Walnut Creek, and there was no product available because they'd all been taken in that. So I have some firsthand experience on that. Let me ask you something related to you're correct, and I appreciate that the marijuana issue has really disappeared because of the way the laws are structured now. You don't have to really go after the marijuana user as used to be done. But on the next level up are some of the non-prescription drugs such as heroin, crack cocaine, and other things like that. Is there a minimum that someone can have proper can hold without being charged without being charged a crime? I'm just asking that.
We don't work on minimums.
Okay. And finally, what about your policy that you may have relative to theft? We keep hearing that there's a minimum amount of dollar now that, in fact, I think a felony now is what, $950 of property theft. That's the value for a felony. But then there are petty thefts that are probably in the $350, $400 range. And we're hearing that individuals are not being prosecuted unless they've been arrested 2 or maybe 3 times. Tell us about that.
Sure, we do have, and let's put it in context, because I think it's really important when we talk about the misdemeanor cases to understand what happens in the rest of the system. So the first conversation starts at the courthouse, I would say, because when we put too many misdemeanors into the system, it really clogs up our court system. And we need those courtrooms for some of the more serious and more violent cases. So that we get pushback from the court when we have too many misdemeanors coming into our system. We also
really
that, yes, you do. And you also get pushback from the county administrators, because when we get too many misdemeanors coming into the system, the public defender's office cannot represent all of the cases. The county then, and so they conflict out. and the county then has to hire private lawyers to represent. And the other thing that happens at the end of the prosecution, let's say that we do take every single case, and because we do have to decide how to spend our resources. Let's say we take every single case and we put it into the system. What people don't realize is at the end of the day, once we put all those cases into the system, let's say somebody went into Safeway and stole $150 worth of food. At the end of the day, there's no accountability. So we bring 75 jurors off the street. We take a police officer off the street for a day to be able to come in and testify. And you hear all of that evidence. And yes, you find that the person really did take it. But then at the end of that case, there's not going to be anything that happens. So that's why when I talked about the neighborhood courts as well, I'm really pleased to be able to start standing those up. Because it is those kinds of things that we will now be able to turn over to you, the citizens, in your own community. So when those arrests happen, instead of bringing those cases into the criminal justice system and filing the charges, we can send them over to the arbitrators in your community. And with the supervision of the DA's office, the 3 arbitrators will sit and listen to the evidence and decide what the appropriate remedy is for that particular conduct. So it doesn't necessarily just get ignored. We just haven't had the resources to be able to file everything that comes in the door. But with the ability now to move out with our neighborhood courts, we'll be able to push more of those cases into those community situations so you all can resolve them.
Great, thank you. Well, it sounds like that there's a strong emphasis from your agency to focus on the more violent type crimes, including such as domestic violence and those kinds of things, so that the victim gets recognized that's being that had the problem either, and I'm specifically citing a domestic violence type situation where the spouse has been injured or what have you, and that your office is taking that and that one gets a lot more attention than these lower level crimes. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I'd say it's a partially fair assessment. I'm not saying that we're not paying attention to the other kinds of crime, right? But I would say that if I had to prioritize my resources, I would certainly prioritize the resources to work on those cases where we have victims who have been harmed, who've had violence committed against them, or who have suffered serious trauma because of someone else's behavior, if I were having to prioritize resources that way.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for, again, making the presentation, and I appreciate you addressing my particular questions, and I'll turn it back over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Anybody else have some questions for the district attorney? Yes, Holly.
Good evening. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions for you. A couple of them are going to piggyback off of Jim. He was firing them away. I was trying to furiously write. So I wanted to just follow up on the felony and misdemeanor data that you provided tonight. Can you let me know if that is a typical year? I'm assuming it was for a 1-year period, or is that year to date this year?
That was 2020.
2020. Okay, so is that typical on an annual basis, or is it up or down because of COVID?
Again, going back to our data, that's one of the things that we're working on. So when I roll out the data report that I'll be coming out with, we'll be able to show you the trends. So not only will I have, say, this is what happened in 2020, I'll have this what happened in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and you'll be able to see if there are any particular trends that are happening there. But okay. Yeah, so that's coming.
Okay, so there isn't any way then to know if, based on policy changes with not arresting and releasing the petty theft cases, for example, that this number has gone down.
I should hope that the misdemeanors have gone down from the previous year, but we're trying to gather that data.
Okay. And then Jim had asked a question about the repeat offenders and how they're handled. And I'm just curious if you can elaborate for me just a little bit more. You had mentioned that there's pushback from the courts and from the county administrators, et cetera. But if there are repeat offenders, how exactly does that work? I'm going to give you an example. If we have local residents here and there was an incident where there was a house that was broken into and some people were on vacation, and that family was advised by not our local PD, they happen to be friends with some officers that were out of the area, who stated that they shouldn't waste their time. They should probably figure out a different way to get the families to pay restitution if they could, et cetera. And so I'm curious if that family had reached out to your office, what other options do they have to be able to, for example, do something with juveniles who are doing this on a repeat basis? How do you categorize that, or how do you keep a log of that if nothing is happening to them from the onset?
Okay, so the first part of it is that the cases don't come directly to us. So the family should first be reaching out to local law enforcement to report that there's been a burglary or a crime committed. Local law enforcement would then do the investigation. And if they believe there's enough evidence, they bring that case into our office for prosecution. I think that's probably a slightly different kind of case that we're talking about here than the person who walks into Safeway and steals the sandwich or something of that nature. It's a little bit different. So when we're talking about breaking and entering into someone's home, I put that into a different category.
Okay.
But as far as when you talk about the repeat offenders, I'm assuming that you're also thinking about those who are, say, the nuisances in our community, who are continually going back into the Safeway or continually doing things that might be really, they're not the violent criminals, but they can be annoying in our communities. And what we've done with those kinds of cases, and we've let all of our police agencies know around the county, that even though taking a single case of somebody taking $300 worth of food might not be a case that would get a rigorous attention in the court system, we ask our agencies to bundle those cases. So when you have the repeat offenders, people who continue to come back, that you bundle those cases and bring them to us in a package. And then we have much more to work with when we take those cases to trial.
Okay. In regards to the arbitration, how can you elaborate a little bit more on how that process would work then in our community? So, for example, is it the petty theft, Safeway, Walgreens
Sure.
cases that we'd be seeing, or is that something that would come? Do we see the first two, and then by the time it's bundled to the third and fourth, it's being handled with your office? I'm just curious how that.
Probably could see the first one, but those are the cases. I'll just. If you're trying to figure out how it works, I think the simplest example that I typically use is with graffiti. Let's just give it, somebody paints graffiti on the side of your city hall. If that case were to come to your group of arbitrators, you would have 3 people who will have been trained, but who would hear that case and that would say, well, I think an appropriate remedy is for you to repaint the building, for example. And then under supervision, they would do that so that the community gets made whole, the person gets held accountable. That's kind of how it would work, and it's in a good example for you. I hope that makes it clear.
Okay, and is the rollout plan to be across all of the 19 cities at once, or will you use,
We hope to stand up initially 3 courts, one in West County, one in East County, and then one in Central County. That's what we're planning.
So are those only city specific, or can it be any city within those?
It could be any city. We want to, make sure that it's accessible. So for example, if there's 1 in East County or 2 in East County, we want to make sure that they're in places that are accessible and where we have the cities. So it wouldn't be city by city right now. It'd probably be more regional.
Okay, and what is what's the proposed timeline for that?
We're just probably within the next week onboarding our neighborhood courts coordinator. We'll have to not only do the recruitment of the citizens, they have to be trained. We also have to find locations within each part of the county to hold them and then begin to funnel the cases. So we're hoping in the early part of 2022 that we've gotten all of those things in place so that we can roll it out.
That's pretty fast. Okay, thank you. That's all I have for right now. I might have some more in a minute. I'll let somebody else ask some questions. Thanks.
Okay, and Jeff, I see your hand up.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us and taking all of our questions. This is really cool. I did have a couple of follow-up questions. I think between Councilmember Diaz and Tillman, they did ask a lot of the questions that I had, but I did take some notes, so hopefully you can indulge me a little bit. When you talked about the neighborhood courts, that was really interesting. That sounds like a great idea. Is there a Sixth Amendment problem with trial by jury with that, or do the accused have to agree to be diverted into that program?
Yes.
Is that how it would work? Like, it's not
Yes,
like you could force them there?
No, I'm not forcing you.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I was just like, oh, that sounds cool. I wonder if they have to agree to that. It's like binding arbitration, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So, I guess when we talk a lot about prioritization, I understand you have limited resources. The courts have their limits on capacity and everything else. But do you think that the deprioritization of misdemeanor prosecution has a chilling effect on enforcement and ultimately arrest?
I should hope not, and because that would really make it difficult for us. For example, when we need to bundle cases, it makes it difficult for us to track the cases. So we do ask our law enforcement partners, and we emphasize this with them, to bring the cases in, because we need to track them, even if for some reason we may not file charges, or if we're sending them to neighborhood courts, or whatever is happening to that case, we need to have a central place to track them. So we hope that they will still bring the cases in.
And you mentioned that the tracking aspect of your office is seeking improvement to get more data, right? I mean, because all that tracking is only as good as the data that you can extract from it. So
I'm talking about two different kind of systems.
Okay.
So when I talk about tracking a case, so like, for example, if tomorrow you were to get, not you personally, but someone gets arrested for having a small amount of drugs in their pocket, right? So if that happens and nobody ever brings it into our office, we don't know about it, right? So we are able to track and find that person's name in our system, so that if a week from now you get arrested again for the same thing, we will be able to look in our own system and say, aha, this is a person who's come back twice within the last week or so.
This person was known to officers.
Mm-hmm. That's a different kind of tracking than tracking the kind of data that what I was being asked for earlier.
Okay, yeah, so you track at an individual level, but the ability to track at an aggregate level isn't quite there yet, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. What I'm talking about is, like, people want to know, like Councilman Diaz was asking me earlier, if I, where my cases come from, for example, in our community, how many of them come in from different agencies, what we're filing, what are our filing needs. People also want to know about racial disparities and equity and issues like that in our community. Those are the kinds of things that we don't yet have the ability to extract from our system without manually going in and trying to look for a lot of that information. That's a different kind of tracking system than the one we're talking about.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I guess, the concern that I hear, a lot of concerns I hear in our community is that, I don't think it's fair to characterize it as stopping prosecuting low-level crimes, because as your deck indicates, we still are prosecuting, misdemeanors in the thousands. But, when we have this perceived approach where we deprioritize misdemeanors, I think it does, if it were me, it would seem to have a chilling effect, but I hope it doesn't. But I don't know. I don't know how that affects the officers in the field. I would hope that they would still vigorously enforce, and then hopefully, those cases that are referred to would get prosecuted. But I do appreciate that there's a prioritization that needs to happen. When we talk, a little while ago, the state passed, I think it was AB 109, which led a lot of state prisons, prisoners that would be in our state prisons back into our county jail system. Has that impacted the capacity of our county jails? in ways that further force you guys to further prioritize those cases that you prosecute?
Yeah. Impacted them in what way?
Well, I mean, if to the extent that more state prisoners were being diverted into county jails, then we run into the same problem that you mentioned earlier about the capacity of our county jails. So I don't know if have you noticed that having an impact on the ultimate capacity that you're working with?
Probably a better question for the sheriff's department as to whether they feel that they're impacted. What we basically have with AB 109 is really the ability of the judge to sentence in a different way. I think that's what you're referring to. So for some crimes, the punishment would be actual state prison where they're going away to a facility. And then for some crimes, the judge has the ability to impose a split sentence so that they actually serve their time. It might be a prison sentence, but they're serving it locally. And I have not heard that it has impacted our sheriff's ability to house those that need to be housed in the jail facility.
Okay. Yeah, when AB 109 was interesting when it passed because, in the rollout or the marketing, let's say, a lot of it was focused around nonviolent crimes. But then when you look at those types of those specific crimes that AB 109 allowed those sentencing changes to, there did seem to be a lot of things that I think for the layman would consider violent, though they were essentially defined as nonviolent. Things like battery of a police officer or threats against witnesses. Those things were eligible under AB 109. So I wonder, does your office, and a lot of what you're talking about with, how you approach the prosecution, it does try to delineate between serious offenses versus nonviolent, low-level misdemeanors. What's your definition of how you delineate between what would be considered low-level versus not? Like, is there a list of crimes, or is it? I mean, how do you do that? Sorry.
Well, that's an interesting question because there's a lot of things that are considered low-level and nonviolent that are still going to be prosecuted. So it's really kind of hard to answer your question. If you're asking me a different question, which is if we're talking about what we're prioritizing, I'm not quite sure I can just answer your question that way because there's a lot of ways to define nonviolent crimes, but it's not the same as saying that those kinds of cases don't get prosecuted. So a car theft, for example, could be considered nonviolent, but it doesn't mean it's not going to get prosecuted. So
okay.
You just can't really.
Yeah, I understand. It's probably a longer question, but yeah, that when AB 109 passed, they did have a list of the various violations that were eligible, and so I was just curious if the guidance that you give your prosecutors has some kind of delineation between those things, or I'm not sure what guidance is given when you're trying to route or the various cases that come across the office.
Well, we have to review each case individually because it's not only just the crime, but we also have to look at a lot of other things. We have to look at the person's history. We have to look at, how many times they've come into our office. So it's not just like, if this happens, then you go in this direction. You have to look at the totality of the circumstances, the case and the crime and everything. So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, when you talk about victim, or when you talk about the history of the alleged perpetrator of this crime, I get that, they have a history or they may be known to the office and they, we have all these, previous arrests, but for the victims of these things, they don't necessarily have a history. So how do you weigh the balance of the victim's interests versus, weighing how many times this person has, been interacted with officers or how the case has maybe bundled? But for bundling, I get that looks at it from the perspective of the offender, but it doesn't really help the individual who is the victim. You know what I mean?
But we're talking about different categories of cases, Councilman Juan. We're just not talking about the same thing. When I'm talking about bundling a case, I'm probably talking about somebody who's creating a nuisance in the public, who might be drunk on the public streets. I'm talking about somebody who might be urinating in public, who might have other issues, but they continue to come back and do the same things over and over in the community. I think we're talking about kind of different things here. When we're talking about the bundling, you're talking about victims. When you start talking to me about victims, I'm thinking about other categories of crimes and not those kinds of low-level street crimes.
Okay, well, let me see if I could clarify. One of the examples you used was the person who did graffiti on, in a public space, let's say, right? If that occurred one time, maybe that doesn't, you mentioned this would be the thing that you would bundle. But for the victim.
I didn't say that, sir.
Oh, okay, so maybe I misunderstood.
I was using that as an example. I was just trying to make a vivid example. Councilman Tillman was asking me what a neighborhood court might look like. And I use that as an example to say, if a person was caught for the first time painting graffiti on the side of a building, this might be a kind of case that might be sent to a neighborhood court for disposition. That's all I was talking about there. I wasn't talking about bundling. I wasn't talking about anything else.
All right. Sorry, I conflated those two things. My apologies there. So yeah, I guess, my main thrust, I guess, is, when we talk about supporting victims of crimes, I think in your presentation and in some of the materials on the DA's website, we talk about, expanding victim and witness service programs, and that was one of the areas, I think, one of the bullets on your deck that you had presented. But, when I think about what many victims would actually want, justice, and to see those responsible held accountable to the full extent of the law, that seems to be in conflict with a lot of the programs that, divert or try to reduce or mitigate time, sentencing time or whatnot. So how do you address that conflict between what a victim may want versus the resources available?
Councilman Juan, just last week, I had an amazing opportunity to sit with a group of victims and survivors, just in a listening session. People who had survived mass shootings like the Gilroy shooting, 101 California shooting. People who had survived having lost a loved one because they were killed by a random bullet. People who had survived sexual assault, rape, and people who had survived street crimes. And so as a district attorney, my job that day was to listen to what they said they needed and wanted. And one of the things that was very interesting about that listening session is that there was nothing on the top of their priority list that said, I need somebody to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. People talked about needing information. Where do I go to get help? How can I find a list of resources? How do I know what to do next? How do I know when my court date might take place? And they also wanted to know what we could do to also get services to people who are accused of crimes so that they do not continue to come back into our communities the same way that they left. And so those were the things that the actual victims, there were about 9 of them, talked to us about. How do we make this better? Because they said that what we're doing is not working. So it's not just, it is important for people to be held accountable, but that is also coupled with their needs for many other things, not just how long of a prison sentence a person is going to get. They also wanted to make sure that when people went into prison, that they didn't just get locked up, that they got services, that they got something that helped them so that when they return, and people are coming back into our communities, that they come back differently so that they do not continue to reoffend. Those are the things that I heard from victims.
No, I appreciate that. I think, each the victims of these crimes, each of them will have their own their own personal situation. And, I grant that there's going to be a whole range of responses. But, I do think that there's going to be a significant portion that do want accountability. And that's hard if we don't have, what I would call zealous prosecution of, to the extent that our statutes contemplate. And I think that, if the perpetrators of these actions are not held to the penalties that are contemplated within our statutes, that we're not zealously representing the state's interest. Because if we didn't like the penalties, then it's up to our legislature to change them. But as long as they're available, or as long as they exist, or think that they're in our adversarial system of justice, that the role of the prosecutor is to zealously represent those things, and it's up to the defense to make their best case on the other side. But I guess it does depend on if you see the role of these things as punishment or as rehabilitation. And I'm not sure where you stand on that.
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Would you see
I can't generalize that, because we got to talk about categories of things. So for me to say, I don't think a person who molests a child should be punished. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that person automatically getting some kind of service. We are going to be prosecuting that case to the fullest extent of the law. And so I just can't generalize and say that I prefer one thing over the other. I think they all have to work together, and I think they all have a place in the criminal justice system when we're talking about community safety.
Okay, no, that's fair. Okay, no, that was, I guess, just one other, and this is kind of a follow-up from Councilmember Diaz's question about the looting question. I think I understood your response to be that it wasn't a fair statement to say that the needs thing was mischaracterized, and I think that when I read it, that seemed accurate. How I took it, and you could correct me if my interpretation was incorrect, but that it was really a question of the charging guidelines, if things would be elevated to either a felony or misdemeanor, between if things get escalated via the looting angle or they're not. Like that's how I read your statement at the time, and I could be misremembering, but I wanted to give you a chance to address that, because what it seemed like was the guidance from your office was mostly around the pathway that things would get charged, not that things would not get charged. Is that accurate?
We're talking about the looting?
Yes. Sorry, I was following up. I'm switching topics on you. Sorry.
And the question, I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify the guidance that your office gave around the looting incidents. And I think at the time, how I interpreted not necessarily your statements, but the statements from your office, were that the guidance was mostly directed towards the pathway that things got charged, whether they got escalated towards the felony path or a misdemeanor path, either theft versus looting in times of emergency.
No.
Okay, so
it didn't have anything to do with whether it was a felony or misdemeanor. The guidelines are about whether or not it should be charged as a looting crime, because looting carries additional penalties. So for example, if a person just happened to be, we keep talking about theft, so I'll just use that example. If somebody happens to go into the store and steal something, I mean, people do that every day, right? And they get charged for those crimes. But a looting takes place when a person is taking advantage of the emergency that it exists at that time in order to commit a crime. And when they are taking advantage of that emergency, like when the fires were happening or when the pandemic was happening, if they're trying to take advantage of the emergency in order to commit a crime, then they should be charged with looting, because there are additional penalties that come along with the looting. Does that make sense? So that's the distinction that has to be made. Whether this is a person who is committing a crime that people commit, or whether or not this is a person who is taking advantage of the fact that we are now in an emergency and using that to commit crime.
Okay, no, that's helpful. So the hypothetical, I mean, this isn't really that hypothetical actually, because, I think not that long ago in Walnut Creek, we had a situation where I don't know how it's officially described, but it seemed like a mass looting event where law enforcement lost control of the downtown area, and there was several break-ins in stores and whatnot. Is that something that would fall? If there's a hypothetical person in that scenario that's breaking into the Apple store and taking iPads because everyone's breaking windows and doing things, is that a situation where your office would you have to assume some things here because this is a hypothetical, but is that a situation where like the looting charge would be appropriate?
It sounds like it would be if it was during that state of emergency, right? I mean, people can walk into the Apple store and steal an iPad, right? That doesn't automatically elevate it to a looting charge. Looting is happening in the chaos of the emergency. Am I making the distinction correctly? So when we were talking earlier, I believe you're talking about in Walnut Creek when there was, I think it was right after the George Floyd, when there was a lot of demonstrations, and then people took to the streets and broke in stores in Walnut Creek. And so again, that was a person that was taking advantage of the emergency that existed. And so if those people were located, if they were able to be found by law enforcement and those cases came into our office, yes, we did prosecute those cases as looting cases. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. That was the extent of my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I know we don't want to keep the district attorney.
Thank you. Thank you for
forever,
the opportunity. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate your coming by, and we look forward to having you back again. It was a great presentation, great give and take as well. I'm glad we had it.
I hope when I come back, I have that data portal up for you as well.
Thank you very much. And when the arbitration thing comes about, please let us know so we can start that.
We will. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you going to allow public comment on this item?
We're going to allow public comment, but we want to let the district attorney go.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. Unless Molly, you have a question.
No, I meant public
yes,
comment.
we're gonna take public comment, and if we need to ask if someone from the public has questions, we'll take it upon ourselves to ask them of the district attorney. So we'll open the public comment now, and if Janet, if we have any hands up for this, please let me know.
Mayor Wolf, I do not have any hands raised on this item.
All right, then we will close the public comment and bring it back to the council. And once again, thank you to our district attorney for showing up tonight. Let's see, where are we? Oh, we are to item number 6, which are reports, city manager and staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a brief reminder from me that we have our first community workshop on the housing element tomorrow evening. It is 6:30. All of the how to sign on to the Zoom meeting is on the city's website, and we look forward to having a great meeting for everyone to get some information and to share some perspectives and really launch us into the process for moving that forward. And with that, I do not have any other items. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question, Raina, with regard to the ease of finding the information for tomorrow on the city website. Is it right on the front page now, or is it just, do you have to dig for it?
It should still be on the front page. Janet can perhaps just confirm for me. It was under news, under the main page, and I believe it's still there.
Yes, that is correct.
Good. And I saw the flyer with the QR code, and it's very good. So hopefully we'll have a lot of people showing up tomorrow at 6:30, right? 6:30.
6:30. Yes. Thank you.
Well, Holly, it looks like you want to Do
No,
your
I
report now. I see you waving. You got it. Go for it.
I would ask our city manager if it's possible to put that event under upcoming events on the front page, because it only lists right now the council meetings in November as a upcoming events, and I would think that's where most residents would go going on the front page. I wouldn't dig in news and events to find that. I don't know if it's possible to get that up there before tomorrow. I just wanted to put that out there.
Just have it pop right up on the front screen.
Yeah, so right
It's under news, but we can look to have that. I'm not sure what drives that events, if that's just driven off the council, but we'll try to make it as visible as possible.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
And you can continue, Holly, if you'd like.
Sure, I can totally do that. Pretty light week for me. I had a couple calls with Raina. Our city manager Schwartz. And then I also met with a couple of people. So let's see on my calendar. I lost my calendar. On the 7th, I had the mayor's conference, so I'll leave. I won't steal your thunder and let you give the update on that.
That's okay.
On the 12th, I had the Library Foundation had their book sale that I attended on Tuesday to help sort books. That was actually fun. I hadn't been in the library sorting books since I was in 4th grade. And I used to go to our little library in Barstow. And they raised over $5,500 over the weekend, which was very good for them. So I wanted to thank the community for all who's participated, and for used books. A lot of them were $1 or so a piece, and then they did sell them by the bags. That's really neat. So thank you all. That's it. That's all I have. I was out of town most of the time and busy with work. So I put it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Peter?
So I had a busy transplan CCTA day last Thursday. We're part of TransPAC, which is one of the 4 divisions in Contra Costa County that reports to the Contra Costa County Transportation Authority. We had a joint meeting on Thursday evening with TransPlan, which is the Western Division, which includes Antioch, Pittsburgh, Brentwood, Oakley. And we talked about the improvements that are happening along the 4 corridor and at the interchange of 4 and 680, and why that's important to us, because clearly Ignacio Valley Road is a corridor for people trying to escape that traffic. And we feel the brunt of that anytime we commute to work to have to go to 24 or through Caldecott. We get the brunt of the traffic coming over the hill. So it's kind of wonderful to see the planning that's happening now relative to the traffic patterns and how we're going to do automation in the future, and how that's going to help solve some of the issues we have, especially in light of some of the zoning that every city in San Clemente, in Contra Costa County has, relative to the numbers that ABAG is being thwarted upon them. So we're going to have a lot more homes and a lot more traffic, and we're all trying to tackle these problems. So I feel fortunate to be part of that thinking group that's trying to solve those problems. Met with the city manager, and I've met with a lot of Clayton residents relative to the housing element. And as we talk about where do you put 570 houses, every one of them's eyebrows raised, and they go, "What?" So this conversation we're beginning tomorrow night. We started it a week ago, but as far as getting public participation is super important for us to figure out what the future looks like relative to those numbers. End report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Diaz?
Yes, just to let you know, my internet's been going up and down. I don't know what the issue is, but I'll get through my report very quickly. Back on the 6th, I had a joint meeting with County Supervisor Mitchoff and Diane Burgess from District 3, relative to the upcoming workshops on redistricting, also on Morgan Territory Community Association. Attended a couple of meetings with the Diablo Rod and Gun Club. We had a meeting with the city manager and specifically the committee for the concerts in the Grove, which included former Mayor Pierce and former council member, our Mayor Howard Geller. And we're going to be delving into that into the future and going into some of the details relative to assuring everyone that the city is being fully reimbursed by things that are taking place with all activities for the concerts. The 13th, for those of you who didn't realize it, was the 246th anniversary of the United States Navy, and I didn't see any flags flying for that downtown. Anyway, spoke to the Society of Retired FBI Agents on the 14th. Then I've had meetings with the chief and city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Jeff?
Mostly email and phone calls, but I did go to the book sale, and my kids got a lot of books. So it was great. I missed it last year, but it's always a great event, and it's great to see people coming out. Now the challenge is to read them all. So that's it.
All right. And I guess it's me now. I too attended the library used book sale. When my wife was shopping for a myriad of books, I was doing a mini meet and greet there, so that was kind of nice. And I'm so glad they raised a lot of money. There were a lot of people. It was a great event. Let's see. Met, of course, with our city manager a couple of times. Did emails and calls, and I also got a chance to communicate with our principals on the after-school trash in the Grove. That seems to be an ongoing problem, and our principals are on top of it. They're very aware of it. I've had some suggestions with regard to this, but the main thing is there are citizens out there who are cleaning up the Grove on their own, taking their own initiative to do that. And, we just have to remind the students to do the right thing, clean up after themselves as they exit the Grove while after school. So their principals are working on that. Also had a meeting with a citizen and also with the staff regarding the benches up on Pebble Beach that have been vandalized. They're now being repaired. And attended the mayor's conference. We had a presentation on the homelessness regional housing plan, also the abandoned vehicles abatement fees. And we got a communication today from the mayor's conference that they are indeed not having any in-person meetings at least until January, which Clayton will be the first to host when we finally do go back. Unfortunately, I won't be there at the time, so I'm disappointed that we won't be able to host and show off our city until at least until January, and maybe past that. And let me see what else. That's just about it, except that yesterday was Vice Mayor Cloven's birthday, so we kind of celebrated a little bit there. So, and that's the end of my report for now. And we'll move on now to public comment on non-agenda items, item number 7. Do we have any hands up, Janet, of the public that would like to speak on non-agenda items? We'll have 3 minutes to talk about what you'd like that's not on the agenda.
Yes, Mayor Wolf, I have a couple hands raised. AJ,
Okay.
as I promote you to panelist, if you can please unmute your microphone, you will have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Oh, what a family.
All right, and we'll start.
Hey there.
Hey, everybody. I'm just here real quick to talk. I want to let everybody know about an event that the CBCA is putting on this year with the Clayton Community Church. So on Halloween Day, October 31st, from 2 to 4 p.m. downtown at the church offices, we're going to have what's called the Heyday event. So basically, it'll be a nice old-fashioned trunk or treat. so the kids can show up in costumes, get some candy. We just wanted to do something fun for the little ones. We know it's been a tough 2 years now, and the CBCA has had to cancel all of our events. So this is just a little something to help the little ones. We're not going to make a full big splash. I'm really just promoting it to the people in our city, not looking to get a big crowd because it's only a 2-hour event. That way, you know, I've got little ones, so I'll bring mine down, but then they can stay in costume and just go trick or treating right after the event. So there'll be games, some carnival games, some pumpkin painting. The church has set up some nice events, and then the CBCA is handling the trunk or treat portion. So anyway, I just wanted to let us city know that we will be out there Halloween day, 2 to 4 at the church building on Main Street. So
and as far as donations go, do you need anything with regard to candy or decorated cars?
I'm sending out another blast to the CBCA members. We're going to round up enough CBCA members to handle the trunk or treating. If anybody would like to donate candy, they're more than welcome to drop off bags of candy at the church building on Main Street. And yeah, that would be great. But we are, again, reaching out to our membership to try and provide some goodies for the little ones. So just to make a nice, fun, small event.
Yeah, if you want, you could drop off candy at my house too. I'll take
that.
Okay. So thank you. Okay. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Look forward to having that event. Thank you. All right. And you said, Janet, there was someone else in the queue?
That is correct, Mayor Wolf. And just so you know, my virtual timer background is not available right now. So I have a little timer on my desk that will beep once it hits 3 minutes. And our next speaker is Dee. Dee, as I promote you to panelist, if you can please unmute your microphone, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just have a quick question. I'm out of state and I just wanted to know if the housing element meeting will be recorded so that I could view it later.
Raina is shaking her head. Yes, it will be.
Yes, it's our intent to record that meeting, and it should be up on the website within about a day or so.
I'm going to try to attend, but if I can, I just want to be able to see it later. So thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet, did we get close to 3 minutes there?
Not quite on that one.
Do we have anybody else?
At this time, I do not have any other hands raised on this item.
Okay. And we will close the public comment on non-agenda items. Moving on, item number 8, 9, 10, we have no public hearings. We have no action items. We have no closed session. Now, item 11, council items limited to council requests and directives for future meetings. Anybody have anything? Yes, sir. Mr. Councilmember Juan.
I'm going to give Raina the opportunity to talk about future meeting planning because I think that she was working out some scheduling. Do you want to talk about future meeting planning?
That's right. And just to, our second meeting in December is scheduled for December 21st, and that is the week of Christmas. So we perhaps are not necessarily going to want to have a meeting that week, nor would we necessarily have everyone. In addition to that, we have 2 grant applications related to the Prop 68 funds that we discussed with you almost a year ago. Those are due by the end of December. We're aiming to get those in by November to the council by the 16th of November. But if we don't, we do need to bring those to the council before the end of the year. Our December 7th meeting is typically rotation. So I will be reaching out to members to find out your availability regarding potential alternative dates, which could include November 30th, which is an intervening week because we have 5 Tuesdays in November, as well as potentially December 14th if there is no planning commission meeting. So please, a heads up and respond to that so we can make sure that we have the broadest participation possible when we need it, so that we can get all those future meetings scheduled. The additional thing to think about is that in January, we typically do not have our meeting the first week in January because people would be trying to do council reports while city offices are closed for the holidays. And so I may actually ask about the second week in January as well, just to make sure we have the broadest number of options to get all those meetings in as we head into the holiday season. So thank you, Councilmember Juan, for remembering that.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would just say, it seems like those grant things is the critical thing. So I don't think we want to miss it because it's the free money. That's it.
Free money is good. All right. Anybody else have anything? No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be November 2nd, 2021. Good night and have a lovely Halloween.